She handed me divorce papers with a smirk. "You'll always be second," she said. I signed without a word. What she didn't know, I'd added one clause she never bothered to read. 6 months later, the judge read it aloud in court. Her screams echoed through the hallway. "My name is Clayton Dorsey. I'm 54, and I work as a senior compliance officer at Berkshire Financial Group in Columbus, Ohio. Detail-oriented work, steady, pays well. 6 figures, full benefits. I've been there 18 years. Maureen, my wife, she's 51, works in marketing for a healthcare tech startup. Confident, polished, knows how to work a room. We met at a barbecue in 1999. I fell hard for her energy. Our son, Owen, is 30, works as a software engineer in Denver. Good kid, calls once a week. It was a Thursday evening, my late day at the office. I came home around 7:30 and found Maureen at the kitchen island in a dark blazer, heels still on. A manila folder sat between us. She didn't say hello, just slid the folder across the counter. "Divorce papers," Maureen said flatly. "I've already signed. You just need to sign page 7 and 15. I stared at the folder. "What is this?" She exhaled with impatience. "Clayton, it's been over for a while. We both know it." I opened it slowly. 20 pages. Asset division. Her name on the downtown condo she bought last year as an investment property. "You've been planning this," I said. "I've been realistic," Maureen replied, walking to the fridge for sparkling water. "Casual. Is there someone else?" She paused, then looked at me with something like pity. "You've always been second, Clayton," she said. "Second to my ambitions. Second to what I really need. This isn't about someone else. It's about me finally putting myself first." That line did it. "You've always been second." I picked up the pen. Read through every page slowly, methodically, the way I read compliance documents at work. She got bored and walked to the living room, scrolling her phone. When I got to page 14, I paused. Then I pulled out my own sheet from my briefcase, one I printed earlier that week. Just in case. The page matched the packet perfectly. Same font, same margins, same legal language. One clause with space for initials. I slipped it between pages 13 and 14. Signed page 7. Signed page 15. Initialed every page, including the one I'd added. I closed the folder and slid it back. "Done," I said. Maureen walked back, picked up the folder without glancing inside, and smiled. "Thank you for making this easy." She walked out, got in her car, and drove away. I stood in that kitchen and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Because Maureen didn't know it yet, but she just signed away more than our marriage. The next morning, I called Gilbert Ross before my first cup of coffee was even half empty. Gilbert's been my attorney for 15 years, handling everything from contract disputes to estate planning. He's 60, built like a retired linebacker, with a voice that sounds like gravel in a blender and a handshake that could bend steel. "Clayton," Gilbert said when he picked up, "it's 6:30 in the morning. Someone better be dead or getting sued." "Getting divorced," I said. "And I need you to look at something." Silence. Then Gilbert said, "Come to the office." 8 o'clock. I was there at 7:45, folder in hand. Gilbert's office sits on the 10th floor of a building downtown, the kind with wood paneling that actually looks dignified instead of cheap. He poured us both coffee from a pot that looked older than my marriage and gestured to the chair across from his desk. I handed him the folder. "Maureen served me divorce papers yesterday. She signed them without reading past the first few pages." Gilbert flipped through slowly, his expression unreadable. When he got to page 14, the page I'd inserted, he stopped. "Read it twice." Then looked up at me with something that might have been respect. "You wrote this yourself?" Gilbert asked. "Printed it at work," I said. "Matched the formatting exactly. Same font size, same margins, same legal phrasing." Gilbert leaned back in his chair. "Clause states that if evidence of infidelity prior to filing is discovered, the initiating party pays a financial penalty of 68% of joint assets, minus mortgage obligations and tax liens." She initialed this page. "Every page," I said, "including that one." Gilbert set the folder down and steepled his fingers. "Do you have evidence of infidelity?" I pulled out a flash drive from my jacket pocket. 4 months' worth. Messages, photos, hotel receipts, GPS data, all from her iCloud account, synced to an iPad she gave me last Christmas. She never unlinked it. Gilbert plugged the drive into his computer. The screen filled with folders. He clicked through them methodically, his face giving nothing away. When he finally closed the laptop, he looked at me with something close to admiration. "Clayton," Gilbert said, "this is the most thorough documentation I've seen in 30 years of family law." "Who's the guy?" "Brent Callahan," I said. "Works as a corporate sales trainer. Travels a lot. They met at some healthcare marketing conference last year." Gilbert made a note. And the timeline. Affair started at least 5 months before she filed. I've got time-stamped messages, photos from hotels, even voice notes where she calls me clueless. Gilbert nodded slowly. "Then we have everything we need. This clause will hold up." She signed it. She initialed it. And the evidence predates her filing by a significant margin. "What's next?" I asked. Gilbert stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the city. "We file a motion to enforce the clause. We attach the evidence. And we wait for her attorney to realize just how badly she screwed herself." "How long?" I asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Her lawyer will try to claim the clause is invalid, that you inserted it in bad faith. But between the video footage from the notary's office and the fact that she had every opportunity to read what she signed, we're on solid ground." I stood to leave, then paused. "Gilbert, one more thing. Can you pull background on Brent Callahan? Employment history? Anything that might be useful?" Gilbert smiled, the kind of smile that made opposing counsel nervous. "Already on it." I walked out of that office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. 3 days after my meeting with Gilbert, I was sitting in my home office when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Clayton Dorsey," I said. "Mr. Dorsey, this is Yvonne Winters. I'm a friend of Maureen's. We need to talk." Yvonne. I knew the name. Maureen's best friend for 20 years. They'd met in a marketing seminar back in the early 2000s and stayed close ever since. Book club, wine nights, the whole package. "About what?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "About what she's doing to you," Yvonne said quietly. "Can we meet? Somewhere private." An hour later, we sat in a coffee shop across town, far from anywhere Maureen would go. Yvonne looked tired, older than I remembered. She was 50, worked in graphic design, always struck me as the reasonable one in Maureen's circle. "I can't stay quiet anymore," Yvonne said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "What she's doing, it's wrong. And I've known about it longer than you think." I leaned forward. "How long?" 8 months, Yvonne said. She met Brent at that healthcare conference in Cleveland last April. Came back talking about him nonstop. At first, I thought it was just a crush, but then she started lying to you about where she was. Girls' weekends that weren't. Late meetings that didn't exist. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. Yvonne looked at me directly. "Because last week, she told me her plan. She's going to take everything in the divorce, move into that condo with Brent, and act like you were the problem all along. She's already rewriting history with our friends, telling everyone you were controlling and emotionally distant." Something cold settled in my chest. I was never those things. "I know," Yvonne said. "That's why I'm here. She's got everyone believing her version. But I was there, Clayton. I saw how hard you worked to make her happy. The trips you planned. The way you supported her business ideas, even when they failed. You didn't deserve this. Can you testify to that?" I asked. "In court, if it comes to it." Yvonne hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. I'll tell the truth about when the affair started. What she said, all of it. But Clayton, you need to know something else." "What?" "She's been withdrawing money from your joint accounts. Small amounts, nothing you'd notice immediately, but it adds up. About $35,000 over the last 4 months. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Started scrolling through transactions. Yvonne was right. Withdrawals marked as cash, each under $2,000 to avoid triggering alerts. She's been planning this for months, I said quietly. Longer, Yvonne said. A year, maybe more. I'm sorry, Clayton. I should have told you sooner. I looked at this woman who'd been in our lives for 2 decades, who'd finally decided that loyalty had limits. Thank you for coming forward now. Yvonne reached in her purse and pulled out a folded paper. I wrote down everything I remember. Dates, conversations, places. Use it however you need to. I took the paper, feeling the weight of it. Gilbert will want to talk to you. I'm ready, Yvonne said. Someone needs to stand up for what's right. We parted ways in the parking lot. As I drove home, I called Gilbert and told him everything. Get her on record, Gilbert said. Recorded statement, notarized. And, Clayton, check your other accounts. If she stole $35,000, there might be more. That evening, I went through every financial record we had. By midnight, I found another $18,000 in irregular transfers. Maureen hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been robbing me blind. Owen called on a Saturday morning, his voice tense. Dad, Mom just called me. She says you're being unreasonable about the divorce. I was in the garage, organizing tools I hadn't touched in months. Something to keep my hands busy. What exactly did she say? That you're trying to punish her for wanting freedom. Owen said. That you've always been controlling, and now you're using money to hurt her. Dad, is that true? I set down the wrench I was holding and walked out to the driveway. Owen, I need to tell you something. And I need you to hear me out before you respond. Okay, Owen said cautiously. I told him everything. The affair, the hidden withdrawals, the divorce papers she'd rushed through without reading, the clause she'd signed that would hold her accountable. I kept my voice steady, factual, letting the truth speak for itself. Silence on the other end. Then Owen said, she cheated. For at least 8 months, I said. Probably longer. I have proof. Messages, hotel records, witness statements. Who's the guy? Owen asked, his voice harder now. His name is Brent Callahan, corporate trainer. They met at a conference last year. More silence. Then Owen said something I hadn't expected. I need to come home. You don't have to do that, I said. I know you're busy with work. Dad, I'm coming home. I'll be there Tuesday. And I'm going to talk to Mom. Owen's voice held a tone that reminded me of myself. Owen was my son, and he'd clearly inherited my sense of when something wasn't right. Tuesday afternoon, Owen showed up at the house. He was 30, looked more like me than Maureen with each passing year. Tall, serious, the kind of guy who thought before he spoke. We sat in the living room, the same room where Maureen had served me papers 3 weeks ago. Owen had flown in from Denver, taken 2 days off work. Now he wanted answers. Tell me everything, Owen said. No edited version. So I did. Showed him the evidence Gilbert had organized. The messages where Maureen called me clueless. The hotel receipts. The witness statement from Yvonne. The financial records showing $53,000 in unexplained withdrawals. Owen's jaw tightened as he read. When he finished, he looked at me with something between anger and disappointment. Not at me. At her. She told me you were the problem, Owen said quietly. Said you'd stopped trying years ago. That you were cold and distant. Was I? I asked. Tell me honestly, Owen. Did I fail her somehow? Owen shook his head. You were the one who showed up, Dad. Every school event, every holiday, every time something broke and needed fixing. She was the one who was always somewhere else. I just thought that was normal. That hit harder than I expected. I'm going to see her tonight, Owen said, standing up. And I'm going to tell her exactly what I think about what she's done. Owen, you don't have to choose sides, I said. Owen looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Resolve. Yeah, I do. And I already have. That evening, Owen went to Maureen's condo downtown. I didn't go with him. Some conversations needed to happen without me there. He came back 2 hours later, face flushed, hand shaking slightly. She denied everything at first, Owen said. Then when I showed her copies of the evidence, she tried to justify it. Said she deserved to be happy. That you'd never understood her. What did you say? I asked. Owen looked at me directly. I told her I didn't recognize her anymore. And that until she owns what she did, I don't want to hear from her. Something broke in my chest hearing that. Not because I wanted Owen to cut ties with his mother, but because my son had just demonstrated more integrity than his mother had shown in years. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me, Owen said. I'm just standing up for what's right. That night, Owen slept in his old room. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. Gilbert called me on a Wednesday afternoon while I was reviewing quarterly compliance reports. His voice had an edge I'd rarely heard. Clayton, I found something on Brent Callahan. You need to see this in person. An hour later, I sat in his office staring at a manila folder marked confidential personnel file. Where did you get this? I asked. Your company archives, Gilbert said. Brent Callahan worked at Berkshire Financial 5 years ago. You signed off on his disciplinary review. I opened the folder slowly. The memories came flooding back. Internal complaint. 2 junior analysts. Inappropriate conduct. Late-night mentoring sessions that cross lines. An incident during a business trip to Chicago that was never fully investigated due to insufficient evidence. I remember this, I said quietly. HR wanted to bury it. I pushed for termination, but management overruled me. He resigned 2 months later. Gilbert leaned forward. Which means Maureen knew who he was. She met him at your office Christmas party that year. You introduced them. The room felt colder. She called him slimy back then. Said he had wandering eyes. And yet here we are, Gilbert said. Clayton, this changes the narrative completely. She didn't just have an affair. She chose to involve herself with a man who has a documented history of predatory behavior toward younger women. I read through the complaints again. Pattern of behavior. Multiple warnings. The language was careful, legal, but the picture was clear. Brent Callahan was a manipulator who targeted vulnerable women in professional settings. Can we use this? I asked. Absolutely, Gilbert said. If her attorney tries to paint this as a romance gone right, we counter with his employment history. If they claim she was swept off her feet, we show she knew exactly who he was years ago. I sat back, processing. There's something else. 10 years ago, Maureen had an abortion. She told me it was a miscarriage. Gilbert's expression didn't change. How did you find out? Medical records from our insurance. I was reviewing old claims last week for the asset division and saw the billing codes. Elective termination, not miscarriage. Did you want children at that time? Gilbert asked. We've been trying, I said. Or at least I thought we were. She told me she lost the baby at 8 weeks. I held her while she cried. Took time off work to be there for her. Gilbert made notes. That's not admissible in the divorce itself, but it speaks to a pattern of deception. Combined with the financial theft, the affair, and her choice of partner, we're painting a picture of someone who's been dishonest for years. I just want this over, I said. It will be, Gilbert replied. But Clayton, when we go into that courtroom, she's going to come at you hard. Be ready. I stood to leave, then paused. What are my chances? Gilbert looked at me over his reading glasses. With this evidence? 90%. Maybe higher. She signed that clause. She initiated the divorce during an active affair. And now we can show she's got a history of deception spanning a decade. I walked out into the afternoon sun, feeling something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly. More like resolution. Maureen had built her exit strategy on lies. I was going to dismantle it with truth. The first message came at 11 at night. My phone lit up on the nightstand, pulling me out of shallow sleep. Maureen, you're making a mistake pushing this. Walk away now, or everyone will know what you really are. I stared at the screen, wide awake now. Typed back. I'm not afraid of the truth. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Maureen, I have evidence of emotional abuse. Financial control. Isolation. You really want that coming out in court. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Gilbert with a single word. Threats. His reply came 2 minutes later. Don't respond. Let her dig her own hole. But Maureen wasn't done. Over the next hour, 6 more messages came through. Each one escalating. Claims about recordings she'd made. Screenshots of arguments we'd supposedly had. Hints about testimony from unnamed witnesses. All of the bluff. I knew it because I'd never been those things. Never controlled her money because we kept separate accounts. Never isolated her because she had her own friends, her own life. Never raised my voice because I'd learned years ago that silence was more effective than shouting. At midnight, I called Gilbert despite the late hour. She's panicking, Gilbert said, his voice clear despite the time. This is what happens when someone realizes they're cornered. She'll threaten. She'll bluff. She'll try to make you react. What do I do? I asked, Clayton speaking. Nothing, Gilbert said. Forward everything to me. Don't respond. Don't engage. Tomorrow morning, we file for a restraining order on electronic harassment and a motion to freeze her social media accounts until the hearing. Can we do that? I asked. Judge Hamilton doesn't like games, Gilbert said. And threatening your spouse during active litigation is about as dumb as it gets. By tomorrow afternoon, Maureen will be legally prohibited from contacting you outside of her attorney. The next morning, Gilbert moved fast. By 10 o'clock, we'd filed the motions. By 3, we had a preliminary ruling. Temporary restraining order granted. Maureen was barred from direct contact and from posting anything about me or the case on social media. Her attorney called Gilbert that evening. I could hear the anger through the speakerphone. Your client is weaponizing the system, Carl said, Maureen's attorney speaking. Your client was threatening witness intimidation at 11 at night, Gilbert replied calmly. The judge agreed with our assessment. This is going to backfire, Carl said. Then advise your client to stop making threats she can't back up, Gilbert said. We'll see you at the hearing. The line went dead. That night, I checked Maureen's social media accounts. All of them were still active, but she'd deleted a recent post. Thanks to the screenshots Gilbert had taken that afternoon, I knew what it said. Some people hide behind lawyers when the truth scares them. She'd posted it at 2 in the afternoon. It was down by 2:30. Too late. Gilbert had already filed it as evidence of restraining order violation. Maureen had tried to control the narrative. Instead, she'd just handed us another win. I was going through the storage unit we'd rented years ago when I noticed something missing. The box labeled Dorsey Family Keepsakes was lighter than it should have been. Inside, the velvet case that held my grandfather's pocket watch was gone. That watch had been in my family for 3 generations. Gold-plated, engraved with my grandfather's initials, worth about $15,000. More importantly, it was irreplaceable. My father had given it to me the day he died, made me promise to pass it to Owen someday. I called Owen immediately. Did your mother ever mention my grandfather's watch? Owen said, the gold one. She showed it to me about 6 months ago. Said she was getting it appraised for insurance purposes. My jaw tightened. She never mentioned that to me. I spent the next 2 days calling every pawn shop, jewelry store, and estate buyer in Columbus. On the 3rd day, I found it at a high-end consignment shop downtown. The owner, a man named Richard, pulled up his records. Sold to us 4 months ago by Maureen Dorsey. We gave her $12,000 for it. I need it back, I said. Cost you 14, Richard said. That's our markup. I paid it. Every dollar hurt, not because of the money, but because of what it represented. Maureen had stolen a family heirloom and sold it like it meant nothing. When I told Gilbert, his response was immediate. We're adding this to the filing. Theft of separate property. That watch was yours before the marriage, which makes it non-marital property. She had no legal right to sell it. Can we get the $12,000 back? I asked. We can try, Gilbert said. But more importantly, this shows the judge who we're dealing with. Someone who'd steal and sell family heirlooms. That evening, I sat with the watch in my hand, feeling the weight of it. The engraving read, To William, for 40 years of service. 1952, my grandfather's retirement gift from the railroad company, where he'd worked his entire adult life. Maureen had sold it to fund her affair. I placed it in my safe deposit box at the bank, somewhere she could never reach it again. Owen called that night. Dad, I heard about the watch. I'm sorry. Not your fault, I said. Still, Owen said, that was supposed to be mine someday. She knew that. It will be, I said. I got it back. It's safe now. Owen was quiet for a moment. I don't know who she is anymore. Neither do I said. But that's not our problem to solve. The watch sat in the bank vault, recovered but not restored. Some things, once broken, never quite fit back together the same way. Maureen's father, Gerald Crane, called me on a Tuesday morning. He was 79, retired from teaching high school history, still sharp as ever. Clayton, Gerald said, his voice gruff. I need to see you. Not at your house. Somewhere neutral. We met at a park near his apartment. Gerald sat on a bench, his cane resting beside him, looking every one of his 79 years. Maureen came to see me last week, Gerald said without preamble. Told me you were trying to destroy her financially over the divorce. That you'd always been controlling and she was finally free. I waited, saying nothing. Gerald continued. Then I called Owen. He told me a very different story. About an affair, about stolen money, about lies stacked on lies. So I'm here to ask you directly. What's the truth? I told him everything. The affair timeline. The financial theft. The family watch she'd sold. The clause she'd signed without reading. The evidence that proved all of it. Gerald listened without interrupting. When I finished, he stared at the pond in front of us for a long time. I raised her better than this, Gerald finally said. Her mother and we taught her about integrity, about honoring commitments. I don't know where we failed. You didn't fail, I said. People make their own choices. Gerald looked at me with tired eyes. I'm testifying on your behalf. Whatever you need from me, you have it. My daughter may have forgotten what marriage means, but I haven't. Gerald, You don't have to choose sides, I said. Yes, he said firmly. I do. Because right and wrong aren't negotiable just because they're family. He stood slowly, leaning on his cane. I loved having you as a son-in-law, Clayton. You were good to her, good to Owen, good to us. What she's done, it's a betrayal of everything I tried to teach her. We shook hands. His grip was still strong despite his age. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, Gerald said. I'm just standing up for what's right. Something my daughter seems to have forgotten how to do. As he walked away, I felt something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not for me, but for Maureen. She'd lost her husband, her son's respect, and now her father's support. All because she couldn't be honest. Gilbert was pleased when I told him. Having her father testify against her, that's devastating. It tells the judge that even her own family recognizes she's in the wrong. He's a good man, I said. So are you, Gilbert replied. And that's going to matter when we walk into that courtroom. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Pale walls, fluorescent lights, rows of empty benches. Judge Hamilton sat elevated behind her bench, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, a woman who'd spent 30 years hearing lies and recognizing truth. Maureen walked in wearing a navy suit, hair pulled back, playing the role of wronged wife. She didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge Owen sitting in the gallery, just took her seat beside Carl, her attorney, and arranged papers like this was a business meeting. Judge Hamilton called the hearing to order. We're here to review the enforcement motion filed by Clayton Dorsey regarding the financial clause in the divorce agreement signed by both parties. Carl stood immediately. Your Honor, we're contesting the validity of this clause. It was inserted without Mrs. Dorsey's knowledge and should be excluded. Gilbert rose, his voice steady. Your Honor, we have video evidence from the notary's office showing Mrs. Dorsey reviewing and signing every page of the document, including the page containing the clause. She had every opportunity to read what she was signing. The judge gestured. Gilbert played the video. There was Maureen, clearly visible, flipping through pages, initialing each one, laughing with the notary. Not once did she pause to read carefully. She signed like someone checking off a grocery list. When the video ended, Judge Hamilton turned to Maureen. Mrs. Dorsey, you initialed and signed this page, correct? Maureen's voice wavered. I didn't know what I was signing. He tricked me. Did anyone prevent you from reading the document? The judge asked. No, but did anyone rush you through the signing process? No, Your Honor, but I trusted. Judge Hamilton held up a hand. You signed a legal document without reading it. That's not fraud. That's negligence. Carl tried again. Your Honor, the financial penalty is excessive. $217,000 is punitive. Gilbert stood. May I present the supporting evidence, Your Honor? For the next hour, Gilbert methodically presented everything. The text messages where Maureen called me clueless. The hotel receipts showing her affair started 5 months before she filed. Yvonne's sworn statement about the timeline. The financial records showing $53,000 in stolen funds. Brent Callahan's employment history and misconduct file. The stolen family watch. With each piece of evidence, Maureen's composure slipped. Her hand started shaking. She whispered urgently to Carl, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Then Gerald Crane took the stand. My father-in-law, leaning on his cane, speaking in the same clear voice he'd used teaching history for 40 years. I raised my daughter to honor her commitments, Gerald said. What she's done here, it's a betrayal of everything I tried to teach her. Clayton was a good husband. She threw that away for selfish reasons. Maureen's face went pale. She mouthed, Dad, please. Gerald didn't look at her, just continued his testimony with quiet dignity. When he finished, Judge Hamilton reviewed her notes in silence. Then she looked up. The clause is enforceable, Judge Hamilton said. Mrs. Dorsey signed it voluntarily. The evidence clearly shows infidelity predating the divorce filing. The financial penalty of $217,814 is hereby ordered, payable within 6 months. Additionally, Mrs. Dorsey will repay the $53,000 withdrawn from joint accounts, plus the $12,000 from the sale of Mr. Dorsey's family heirloom. Maureen stood abruptly. This is insane. You can't do this. He manipulated everything. This isn't fair. Judge Hamilton's voice turned cold. Mrs. Dorsey, you initiated a divorce while engaged in an active affair, stole marital funds, and sold your husband's family property. The only manipulation here was yours. The ruling stands. One strike of the gavel. Maureen started crying. Not quiet tears. Loud, heaving sobs that echoed in the small room. Carl tried to calm her, but she pushed him away. I stood, collected my folder, and walked toward the exit. As I passed Maureen, I stopped. She looked up at me, mascara running, face red. You said I'd always be second, I said quietly. Turns out you were first to lose everything. I walked out into the courthouse hallway, where Owen and Gerald waited. Owen put his hand on my shoulder. We didn't need words. It was over. For months after the judgment, I stood in my kitchen making coffee. The same kitchen where Maureen had served me divorce papers. But it felt different now. Lighter. Like the air had cleared. Owen had moved back to Columbus, took a remote position with his Seattle company, so he could be closer. We had dinner twice a week, talked about things beyond the divorce. He was dating someone new, a software designer named Rachel. They'd come over last Sunday, and I taught her how to make my father's famous chili recipe. The money for Maureen came in 3 installments. $217,000 from the clause, $53,000 in repaid withdrawals, $12,000 for the watch. Total, $282,000. I put half in Owen's name for when he got married. The rest went into a trust for future grandchildren. Maureen had to sell the downtown condo to cover the payment. Last I heard, she'd moved into a small apartment in the suburbs. Brent had vanished the moment the judgment came down, apparently not interested in a woman who'd lost her financial cushion. She tried reaching out to Owen twice. He hadn't responded. Gilbert called last week to tell me Maureen's attorney had filed one final appeal. It was denied within 48 hours. It's truly over, Gilbert said. She has no more legal options. Yvonne stopped by occasionally. She'd lost most of her other friends when she testified against Maureen, but she said it was worth it. I can sleep at night now, she told me. That matters more than book club. Gerald passed away 2 months after the trial. Heart attack, quick and painless. At the funeral, Maureen tried to talk to me. I politely excused myself. Some bridges, once burned, aren't worth rebuilding. The house went on the market last month. Too many memories, both good and bad. I bought a smaller place closer to downtown, near where Owen lived. A fresh start in a space that was entirely mine. At work, I'd been promoted to director of compliance. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent months ensuring Maureen complied with the consequences of her own actions. On a Saturday afternoon, I took my grandfather's watch out of the safe deposit box, sat with it at my new kitchen table. The engraving still read, "To William, for 40 years of service. 1952. Owen was coming over for dinner. I decided tonight was the night to give it to him. Not because I was dying or anything dramatic, just because he'd earned it. He'd stood up for what was right when it would have been easier to stay neutral. The doorbell rang. Owen, punctual as always, holding a six-pack and a grin. Ready to tackle that grill you bought? Owen asked. Born ready, I said. We spent the evening on my new back porch, cooking steaks, talking about his upcoming vacation with Rachel, discussing whether I should finally try that dating app he kept recommending. Before he left, I handed him the velvet case. Grandpa's watch, Owen said, opening it carefully. Dad, are you sure? Never been more sure of anything, I said. You stood up when it mattered. That's what this watch represents. Integrity. It's yours now. Owen hugged me, something he hadn't done since he was a kid. Thanks, Dad. After he left, I sat on the porch watching the sun set over Columbus. 26 years of marriage gone. A son who respected me more than ever. A future that was uncertain, but entirely mine to shape. Maureen had been right about one thing. I had been second. Second to her lies. Second to her selfishness. Second to her lack of integrity. But I'd never been second to myself. And that, I'd learned, was all that really mattered.